I'm willing to bet that most of you that are watching this video right now know of and are hopefully fans of Nando V Movies. Well, much like back when he did One Marvelous Scene, which brought together the internet's best video essayists and creators to gush about their favorite scene from anything MCU related, and also much like One Excellent Scene, which I just so happen to be a part of, link to that video down below. Everyone involved was tasked with finding and discussing their favorite scene from any one of the Fox X-Men films, any of the games, the comics, the TV shows, anything X-Men, basically. Nando is back, but this time with a slightly more broad topic. This is One Villainous Scene. Again, just like the last few collabs, there are a lot of much more talented creators and video essayists than myself involved. Nando created a playlist to showcase everyone's work, so if you see this and feel like you want to contribute your voice, your scene, and just have a chance to be a part of something awesome with a ton of other awesome people, then go ahead and check out the playlist I have linked right below and reach out to Nando to see about getting your video added. With all that out of the way, I feel that it's time I introduce you to the scene that I chose. Now, yeah, I could have used this as an opportunity to talk about anything other than Cape, but Cape just keeps pulling me back in. Did I go with my favorite comic book movie of all time, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World? No. Did I go with a scene from my favorite superhero movie of all time, Spider-Man 2? Nope. For this one, I wanted to try and go with something that a lot of people might not immediately think of, and that is the final heartbreaking interaction between Peter and Otto at the end of Marvel's Spider-Man for PS4. Much like how I love superhero and comic book movies, I also happen to love comic book and superhero video games. Shocker, I know, but the original Neversoft Spider-Man games on the PlayStation 1 are quite honestly some of my favorite games of all time. I remember spending so much time as a kid playing the Spider-Man 2002 movie tie-in game on my PS2. I used to watch the movie on repeat and then immediately jump right into the game to swing around and web up thugs as a pixelated Tobey Maguire. Now, no, I never really beat the game because I was a dumb little ape-brained kid, but at that age, just swinging around to the sky with your webs attaching to nothing but hopes and dreams, and fighting the same few enemies over and over again was more than enough for me. Jump ahead just a couple years to Spider-Man 2, also on the PlayStation 2. This game single-handedly laid the groundwork for Insomniac's 2018 smash hit, being able to swing through a huge open-world New York City, webbing up bad guys, saving window washers, collecting kids' balloons, and of course delivering pizza. I sunk so many hours into that game back in the day, and if I'm being honest, I would totally play it again if I had a working copy. I do still own a PS2, so I might be hitting up eBay soon. Now jump ahead a solid 12 to 13 years or so and we get a surprise trailer, at least it was a surprise to me, for a new PS4 exclusive from one of my favorite game studios of all time. They just so happen to be the geniuses behind another one of my favorite franchises, Ratchet & Clank, Insomniac Games. The brains behind Sunset Overdrive are putting their open world expertise to the test with a new Spider-Man game. The Webhead being my favorite superhero, I was so goddamn excited for this game almost immediately. I stuck with this game through all of the trailers, all of the gameplay demos, and even hashtag Puddlegate or whatever the it was called when for some stupid reason people online were mad that puddles looked different. I really hate the internet a lot of the time. Anyway, needless to say, this game was 1000% a day one purchase for me. Smash cut to day one, I put the disc into my PS4, inevitably wait for the day one patch to download and install, and finally get to press play on what, upon rolling credits for the first time, would become one of my absolute favorite games of all time. Hearing the opening of that score for this game while looking at Spidey clinging to a flagpole in the start menu was honestly an awesome experience all on its own. Over the course of what I assumed would be 20 to 30-ish hours of my time with this game, I grew to love the characters introduced throughout the story. As a certified Raimi shill, Tobey's version of the character will forever be my favorite live-action adaptation of the Wallcrawler, but by the end of this game, Yuri Lowenthal sold me. He was such a convincing Peter Parker and Spider-Man. I separate them because if you know anything about Spidey stories, they really are two different people. Not every actor, or in this case voice actor, is able to pull off both sides of the Spidey coin, but my man Yuri nailed it. He was able to give off such an emotional and heartfelt performance with just his voice, and that is wildly impressive to me. I might even go as far as to say that this version of the character might be my favorite adaptation outside of the source material in the comics, period. When it comes to different forms of media, there have really only been a select few that have actually brought me to tears. I go to the ending of Parks and Rec and Schitt's Creek, which are two of my favorite series of all time. The ending of Marriage Story gets me to tear up a little bit every single time I watch that damn movie. Let's see. There's also A Star is Born, Spider-Man 3, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Infinity War, and Endgame. It's clear that I really only have deep emotional reactions to film and TV, typically, anyway. Off the top of my head, there are really only 2 video games that I could think of that have actually been able to bring me to that point. The first one being when I first played through The Last of Us. Seeing Joel hold his dying daughter in his arms as he watches the life leave her eyes was brutal. Second one is this game. 2 times, 2 separate scenes, but I'm only here to talk about one of those scenes. Now, I know this collab isn't one emotional scene, it's one villainous scene, but this focuses on the main villain of the story, and I feel like that's why it's sort of a way to work it into there. But I don't know, I just love this scene, I love this villain, I love this character, I love this game, so I want to talk about it. Throughout the game, we get to see the relationship between Peter and his boss/mentor, Otto Octavius. It feels like a real fleshed out relationship. They feel like real human beings, and that's incredible to see in a game like this. From the beginning of the story, you can tell that Peter genuinely looks up to Otto. He admires him, not only as a boss or as a scientist, but maybe even as a bit of a father figure. I mean, obviously we all know what happens to Uncle Ben in Spider-Man stories. I don't need to tell you again. So because of that, I would say Peter has a bit of a void in his life. Raimi's films tried to fill that with responsibility to save and protect New York. Webb's films filled it more or less with the same thing. The MCU tried filling it with Tony Stark, and if you've seen my video on how Disney has ruined the character for me so far, then you'll know how I feel about that. But this game seems, to me anyway, to have been trying to fill that missing piece in Peter's life with Otto. So to see that relationship tested, and not only tested, but slowly fall apart over the course of the game as Otto inevitably is on the dark path towards becoming who we all expected him to become, Doc Ock. When Peter learns that Otto is the mastermind behind the entire Dragon's Breath pandemic that he has planned for New York, he is, as you could imagine, heartbroken. After a long and what I would guess exhausting fight with Otto on the roof of Oscorp Tower, Peter remembers that Otto has the only remaining vial of the anti-serum needed to counteract the effects of Dragon's Breath. He drops down to where Otto landed, below where they had just been fighting. Otto is there lying on his back, anti-serum on the floor next to him. Peter reaches over to pick it up, but Otto grabs his wrist. He goes on to explain that he saw Peter as a son of his own and that he should have known that he would turn on him too. Peter is, of course, taken aback by this. He then goes on to say just how much he truly worshipped Otto. His mind, his conscience, the fact that he's always trying to help others and was never one to give up. Otto then tries to put himself on the same level as Peter, saying that men like them have a duty to use their talents in the service of other people, even if it goes unappreciated. And you know what? To some extent, I think he's right. Peter has a moral obligation to use his powers for the good of New York and to do what he can to help keep his city and the people living there safe from any harm. The very harm that Otto was also trying to inflict on the city, and that's where you see the villainous act come out. Where these two diverge is that Otto looks at those who need his help as beneath him. That is not and never will be a viewpoint that Spider-Man would ever share. He doesn't look down on anybody. If Into the Spider-Verse has taught me anything that I didn't already know to be true about the character of Spider-Man, it's that literally anybody could be behind that mask. The fact that it just so happens to be a poor 20-something college graduate from Queens makes the character that much more relatable to such a wide range of people. I see a lot of myself in the character of Peter Parker, this version in particular. The money troubles, struggling to maintain healthy social relationships with the people you truly care about while also juggling a career or job and something you're passionate about. It's not easy. Life isn't easy. But all we can do is just strive to be the best version of yourself every single day, and I feel like that is a big underlying theme of the Spider-Man mythos as a whole. Anyway, back to the scene at hand. Peter isn't having any of the bullshit that Otto was spewing. He tells his once beloved mentor,
"You are everything I wanted to be!"
Otto then switches up his tactics a bit. He goes on to try and manipulate Peter by blaming everything on the neural interface of the arms, saying that they have corrupted his mind and that everything he had done wasn't really him. It was the arms, and he really had no control. He claims that if the two of them work together, they'd be able to fix it as he reaches out his hand asking for Peter's help. Peter then turns to leave as Otto is still lying there, this time begging for help. Begging to not be thrown into the raft, claiming that they'll take his arms, leaving him trapped in this useless body, as he puts it.
If they put me away, they'll take my arms. I'll be trapped in this useless body.
He then goes on to try and use Peter's words against him, saying, "You said you'd never abandon me. You promised," as he follows that up with a bit of a backhanded threat. Of course, you can rest easy knowing that your secret is safe with me. Peter, this time with tears in his eyes, goes on to say one of, if not my favorite line from the entire game.
And of course, you rest easy, knowing your secret is safe with me.
You do what you think is best, Doc. It's all any of us can.
So you might be asking yourself why I decided to go with this specific scene from this game, and it doesn't seem all that villainous, but the underlying context of the fact that these two characters were so close and so friendly with each other throughout the entire story of the game, up until this point where everything is sort of turned upside down, really interesting, really well done, and I just love the way that the writers over at Insomniac handled this. And the reason, again, I decided to go with a game over a movie or a TV series is just because this game means a lot to me. Like I said before, not only is it one of my favorite Spider-Man stories, it's just straight up one of my favorite stories, period. This specific scene is actually one of a small handful of moments throughout the game that brought me to tears. I strongly urge you to go play the game for yourself. If for some reason you've made it this far into this video without having played the game, just do yourself the favor, close this video, and go play this damn game. You won't regret it. It's 100% worth your time. I fell in love with it so early on that it's currently my first and only Platinum trophy on PlayStation, and I've been playing on PlayStation consoles for most of my life. I'm not usually one to try and complete games in this way, but I felt compelled to with this one. It really drew me in more than I ever thought it would. If you love the character of Spider-Man as much as I do, then you'll love the story that the beautiful minds over at Insomniac have crafted here. And to end it on a high note, pun intended, I think the man High Top Films said it best himself. This really is the perfect Spider-Man movie. I just want to take this second at the end of the video to thank you all very much for watching. Like I said, if you're interested in joining in on this villainous scene collab, I will link the playlist right down below. You can go follow Nando on Twitter, subscribe on his YouTube channel, and reach out to him and see if he can add the video to the playlist, which, like I said, link right down below. Anyway, look out in the next couple weeks for another video that I can't really talk about yet, but, you know, it's exciting. And then hopefully between now and then I will have a video out on the Suicide Squad, which hopefully by the time you're seeing this I've watched and written most of the video. Anyway, again, thank you all for watching. I know I've sort of been up and down on this channel, but I'm kind of getting back into the swing of things. I'm starting to enjoy writing again. I'm starting to enjoy the editing process. Again, thank you all for watching. I've said it a lot. I know. But I will see you guys hopefully in a week or two with the Suicide Squad video. See ya.